Good morning, Madfesters. I don't know if that's a thing or if I've just created something, but it's a delight to be here. So we are here to share the secrets of Cadbury's success with you. And in the spirit of Cadbury's generosity, this isn't just about storytelling, but we're sharing the story with you in a way which you can take those insights and apply them to create great work and deliver great results yourself. So I'm delighted to have on the stage with me today Emma Paxton, who looks after all things Christmas and Halloween at Cadbury, Ollie Gilmore, who's Group Planning Director at VCCP, and I'm Lynne Deason. I head up Creative Excellence for Kantar in the UK. So to do a bit of scene setting and make you think, OK, this is something I do need to pay attention to, I wanted to share a little bit with you about the story of their success and just how absolutely phenomenal it is. And we are delighted to have been part of this journey since 2016, when they realized actually joy was becoming generic in the category and they needed to differentiate themselves and regain the love of the nation. You can see here, looking at our Kantar Brand Z data, the brands increased in value by 51%, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's the most meaningful and salient brand in the category. It's increased its sales value, and I think for an established brand, it's incredible that it achieved the status of being Britain's fastest growing grocery brand. And you can see here evidence of how important advertising has been in driving that success. So this is, again, data from Kantar Brand Z, and we're looking at consumer perceptions here. So we can see that increasingly the brand is perceived to have great advertising. We know that's a key driver of success and effectiveness, but it's also perceived to be making lives better. So making a tangible, genuine difference to people's lives. But from a commercial point of view, as a consequence of doing that, as a consequence of building meaning and differentiation, it's a brand that people are prepared to pay a premium for. And that comes through in the commercial results as well. Here we're looking at the consumer response to one of the executions. This is Secret Santa from Christmas last year. It was the top performing Christmas ad in the UK. And what's brilliant is you can see it's got the potential to deliver results in the short term, but there's no compromise here. And that's something we'll come on to talk about. It's also building the brand in the long term. And when you come on to look at how that played out in the market, the best Christmas ever. So, massive applause to the team over there and everyone that supported them. They did a really brilliant job in succeeding, as I say, in the short term and the long term. So we've got 3 pillars that underpin this to talk you through today. The first of these is that Cadbury is always anchored in generosity. So its strategy is always at the core, but it taps into human insights to turn small moments into really meaningful ones, because those are the ones that are important in life. And that means it evokes an emotional response from consumers, and they pay attention to it, they remember it. They're very focused on nurturing ideas that people love, so their audience, not themselves, and getting that nuance right is really important. So identifying insights, those small moments that will connect with people, but then also being open to get consumer feedback, to optimize executions across different touch points. That's really a key part of their success. And finally, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable is about being brave and courageous. So setting out right from the outset to disrupt the status quo. As a team, to be unified in doing things differently. Because if you follow category norms, you just become bland and category generic, and that's a route to failure. But also, being comfortable with the uncomfortable is about the nature of relationships and having trust in each other, but also the freedom to share real opinions and trust that the team will do what they need to do and build that really effective partnership. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Ollie and Emma to tell you a bit more.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Lovely stuff. I shall move out of the way of the screen. Fueled by culture, always anchored in generosity. I mean, it sounds quite grand. To give you some context, so we pitched for the Cadbury account, VCP, end of 2017. We talked about it being a national treasure in decline. I think it's always good when you pitch to have some dramatic language, but also to have some flattery within it. And that's where the brand was. You know, Cadbury Dairy Milk was in decline. The Cadbury brand was in decline. And at the same time, we had this sense that, you know, the connection with the public, to some degree, that Cadbury had, was dissipating somewhat. And there'd been a slew of headlines, even in the years building up to that moment, sometimes justified, sometimes not, about things that were going on at Cadbury, often quite negative. There was even a rumour that the recipe of dairy milk had changed, which wasn't true at all. But it was like the brand was losing the benefit of the doubt. And so we came and looked at the brand and how the brand was operating. And this was 10 years after Gorilla, you know, the famous, you know, Phil Collins drumming Gorilla. Amazing piece of work. You know, anyone would sort of want that on their reel. But it was one of a kind. And it was really hard, I think, for the brand to follow that up. And there's kind of been this kind of waning effect of that. And at the same time, the category had sort of caught up. You know, and you had this kind of quite noisy, quite cluttered category. And there's a sense it was all getting quite overblown. And we said, look, get rid of all that. Get rid of the clutter, get rid of the noise, get back to what is at the core of Cadbury. Which, if it clicks on, brings us to here. So and we talked about a couple of things in particular. We talked about the glass and a half. You know, this feature of dairy milk has been there since the brand was launched in 1905. It's arguably the most famous ingredient in an FMCG. It's good ingredients in generous helpings. It's like the encapsulation of Cadbury in a visual and in a product. And then the brand's history, you know, like any agency pitching for an account, you dig into the history. Cadbury's history is phenomenal. I mean, you learn about how progressive and enlightened the brand has been. So that's John Cadbury there from the 1820s. You know, in many ways ahead of its time in its treatment of workers' rights, how it thought that a company should have a responsibility in society. You see that generosity played out. So we said, look, get back to this generosity. And what we also said was that we found it really interesting because we were going up against what we believed is a tension in everyday culture. That it can look like, on a day-to-day basis, that selfishness is dominant. You know, if you look at newspaper headlines or you scroll through your phone, you think, you know, selfishness is where everything is going. And yet, when you dig a little bit deeper, you know, everyday generosity is there beneath the surface. And we felt that we could be the brand that inspires that and celebrates it. At which point, I will hand over.
So I guess, given generosity's universal understanding and timeless appeal, we knew we had something that had both stretch but also longevity. But with that kind of longevity comes the importance of nurturing and making sure that we're staying consistent over time so we're building for success in the future. So what we had to do in order to get that consistency was build a set of guidelines. And those guidelines would inform everything from advertising through to partnerships, activations, and all the way through to our comms. And that really made sure that we really stayed true to the consistency of that generosity at the heart of absolutely everything we did as Cadbury. And so I'll now share with you the first expression of generosity, my favourite ad, Mum's birthday.
Sorry. Come on. Yeah, that's me. Yeah. Yeah, go on.
I'd like a bar of chocolate, please. It's for my mum.
Your change.
Happy birthday, Mum.
There's a glass and a half in everyone.
Onwards. Thank you. Right, part two. Nurture ideas the audience loves. I think, you know, we've been heartened by and learned from the kind of responses that we've got from the public over time. In many ways, that's why there are some strong consistencies, as Emma said, throughout the 6 years of the campaign. We've also, perhaps more interestingly, kind of taken inspiration from what we dislike and what we're sort of going up against, what's our enemy, which brings us to this. This is Kylie Jenner at the Met Gala Awards, for those who don't know. So, I think if you were to take one item, one behavior that symbolizes the last decade, you could say it's a selfie, right? And it's that selfies are kind of imbued with this thing about being part of activity and events and glamour. It's like a life well lived is a life at the center of the action. And that's what a selfie says to you. And yet really, generosity is the complete opposite to that. Generosity actually finds its meaning and its poignancy often in contexts that are everyday and a bit mundane. And so we've kind of challenged ourselves, really, to find what are those scenarios, those everyday scenarios that you don't expect to see generosity in, and then it can appear. We talk on Cadbury about small, big, small, generous acts with disproportionately big meaning. And we went, well, can we even, as the next ad will show, in a late-night garage forecourt, find that poignant, generous moment?
Hiya. You all right? Number 6. One of those, please.
You got this?
Love you, Dad.
There's a glass and a half in everyone.
So on to the final one. So when it comes to key seasonal periods like Christmas and Easter, how do we do generosity at a time when practically everyone's doing generosity? We had to get comfortable with the uncomfortable and put our big, brave pants on. So when it comes to planning the Christmas advert last year, that's exactly what we had to do. So when we think about Christmas advertising, all of you will be familiar with it. What we see is a lot of big brands spending a lot of money on production, on media, all vying for your attention, but most importantly, vying to make you cry, weep as much as possible on your sofa. And not only do we know that consumers want this through research, we also know that they're anticipating it. They're ready to cry at some sick joke that we as British people want at Christmas time. And we kind of faced straight into that. We knew that with the budget we had, both production and media, we were never going to compete with the big players like you see here. So we had to do something differently, roll up our sleeves and do something a little bit out of the ordinary. So, stepping away from category conventions is exactly what we did. So Cadbury Secret Santa is a platform that we as a business have supported for the past 6 years. It is a really beautiful platform that essentially allows you to send chocolate secretly for free, and we do that on your behalf. But the problem with it was it had limited scale and only really popped up in about 5 locations across the country. So to enable us to stand out last year, what we wanted to do is scale up. And what I mean by scaling up is we turned what was a physical pop-up postal service into a countrywide out-of-home execution, and so transformed static, fly, and digital posters right up around the length and breadth of the country into these postal services, where you could go up, see Jeff, scan the QR code, and send a chocolate for free from that poster in situ in real time to someone you loved absolutely for free. And when I say we brought scale to this, over the 6-week period, 48 million people across the country were able to see this poster, which shows just how far and wide we went with this activation. Now, we could have stopped there. We could have spent only 8% of our media budget on this execution. We could have kept it as an activation only, but we didn't. we went all in. And absolutely every part of our creative touch points and all of our media spend down to the last penny went to advertising this post service, which I don't think has ever been done before. And I think when Ollie came to us with the idea that he wanted to put an out-of-home poster in our TV advert, I think I nearly fell off my chair. But as you saw from the success in Lynne's slides earlier, you can see that it really did work. And I'll show you now exactly what we did.
What if you could send free chocolate in secret to someone special? Maybe that friend who always makes you laugh. Or just someone that needs a little lift. With Cadbury Secret Santa, you can send free chocolate secretly from a poster. Like this one, and this one. I'll be popping up all over the country. Look out for a poster near you.
So what I'm not saying is say yes to putting an out-of-home poster in your advertising, but what I am saying is give some of these brave ideas a chance, because surprisingly to us, it absolutely worked. And I think there's 3 things that allowed us to be brave as a team when looking to bring this idea to market. The first was clear alignment with VCCP and your agency team on what it would take to cut through. We were crystal clear on what it would take and how we were going to do it. The second is a shared commitment. You know, we have a great relationship as a client agency team, but under no circumstances were we ever going to compromise on the idea. We were all in, and we had the trust in each other to stand by that. And then the final one is just research. We spoke to consumers through the development of the campaign with Kantar and did some qual deep dives and understood not only the context that we were facing, you know, the weeping point I made earlier, but also that this idea had legs. We had enough insight from that qual research that gave us the evidence to go back to the business and say, it's actually more brave to go with the more risky option. And so we were able to stand by this idea and really make sure we put all of our budget, time, and energy behind it.
Thanks, Emma. Okay, so if you're not convinced yet, I wanted to just briefly share some of the numbers with you and just reflect on what this means for you. So, you know, generosity is Cadbury's North Star, so think about what's yours? What's the North Star for your brand? And do you know how to express that emotively and tap into culture to make meaningful connections with people? And committing to that across every encounter is really key to your success. And if you think, it's a bit like walking through a field. If you walk through the same path every day, gradually the path becomes clear. The same is true with mental associations in people's brains, which is what your brands are. You repeat, and you get that clarity. And you can see brands that have that sense of meaning and difference command 9 times higher volume share. Nurturing ideas that the audience loves is absolutely critical. You know, make them feel good, lift them, entertain them. And you've got some data here from our latest research with Walk, which is looking at the relationship between creative effectiveness, as we predict it through our consumer research using Link Plus, and in-market profitability. And the top-performing ads deliver 4 times the profit. This is something you can control. It's in your power, so make sure you're putting the effort and the energy behind it. And then finally, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. If you look at award winners, whether it's Effie, Walk, Cannes, IPA, they land in the top 20% of all ads on average for being distinctive. So be inspired, go break the mold, do things differently, do things in your brand's way, and build great relationships as a platform to succeed from. Thank you very much.